Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, it's days before the important Pennsylvania primary. Two of the state's leading journalists will analyze, and then when does the budget and politics all blend together? You'll find out with two Harrisburg insiders, Pennsylvania government and politics, in-depth and in detail, and it all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, I'll tell you what, we have big primaries in the state of Pennsylvania, but the National Press Corps, in fact, international journalists are crawling all over the state. Arlen Specter and Joe Sestak in literally a dead heat. Joining me, as often is the case, are two of the state's leading journalists. Sitting across from me, Brad Bumsted with the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review and Robert Swift with the Times Shamrock Newspapers. I got that all right. All right, guys. Brad, look, you've covered, you don't have to tell me how many campaigns. Did anyone imagine that Joe Sestak could turn this into a dead heat? I mean, 6 weeks ago.
It sure didn't look like it at that time, and even 3-4 weeks ago, it didn't look like he was going to be able to catch Specter. But now the question is, did he peak too early?
Yep, good point.
We saw him come up in the polls about a week and a half ago, where he really made this rapid rise. Now the political machinery is coming out for Specter, like President Obama appearing in an ad. Yep. It's too close to call, but the key to this race, Terry, is going to be whether Specter can mobilize the ground forces in the city of Philadelphia and get the kind of voter turnout he needs. Yeah,
I think that's true. Now, RB, the commercials have been devastating. I mean, they have been tough, negatives on both sides. The turnout isn't expected to be big. The commercials have made all the difference. I mean, this race was nowhere. Specter was 20 points ahead until these commercials.
Well, I have been saying for the past year I thought we would be in this situation. Right. I felt that all along. A reason is I think that Pennsylvania, when it does go for change, they tend to go toss out U.S. senators. There's a track record over 40 years of voters doing this. The governors seem to be okay, and Specter is the biggest, when you think of incumbent, you can't think of anyone who has more attached to that name.
Almost the poster child, 5 terms, right, guys?
Plus the party switch after a long career as a Republican switching to Democrat. Yep. So I'm not surprised by this, and I think it's going to be a nail-biter.
You know, originally, RB's brought up a great point. I never thought, you know, the party switch in the early polls, it didn't seem to matter, Brad, but as voters have started to make up their mind, and in the poll that we did just this past week, I mean, that came up as one of the biggest single reasons why Democratic voters want to change. I guess at the root, these partisan Democrats really look at, and particularly when Specter goes after Sestak, you know, the negative, it's like a Democrat, go ahead.
That's a devastating commercial that Sestak has out where,
talk about that.
In it, they have footage from somewhere of Senator Specter saying that the party switch will enable him to get reelected. And that hurts. Whether it's a Republican or a Democrat who switches, no one trusts them after that. And that creates some problems for anybody who does that. So, you know, it's hard to say how much this will impact it, but it's clearly a factor in all of this. However, the flip side of it is there are a lot of Democrats who have voted for Arlen Specter in the past.
That's true.
Particularly conservative Democrats from Western Pennsylvania.
Good
and
point.
The question becomes now, will they prefer Specter over the more liberal Sestak?
Yeah, we're not, I mean, what's fascinating, Robert, is that we're still not looking at a huge turnout. I mean, I will go in the next segment of the governor's race, but it's almost like some voters are into it, but the vast majority of voters, I would be shocked if we get more than a 40% turnout. But Pennsylvanians have never really gotten invested in Senate elections. It's like, you know, if it's not at the local level where they can go ahead.
No, when these in the past, when these defeats have occurred for senators, it's usually come as a shock, unexpected. In this case, we have had signs of this. Now, I mean, even back to the one other race like this in 1991 when we had a special election with Thornburg and Harris-Wofford, and then there was a lot of national attention in that race. That was still an unexpected loss for Thornburg, who was sort of seen as an incumbent type figure. So we don't have really a sense of that. We also have a shifting Democratic Party vote in Pennsylvania, shifting to the southeast.
Yep.
But the figure who was the catalyst for that, Governor Rendell's not on the ballot.
Right.
That's another thing we don't know, wild card.
Yep, that's true. One other important aspect of this, I think, has to do with sort of these national issues where both Specter and Sestak have really been very close in their votes since the party change by Arlen Specter. So this isn't so much a question of whether they're for the president or not. I mean, even Sestak is going out of his way to walk around President Obama, who's endorsed Senator Specter. So this really is about incumbency, Brad. It's really about the party switch. But on the incumbency thing, we are seeing a lot of angst out there. The voters, I mean, I know you interview a lot. Voters are not happy right now.
No, they're not. But I think it's, what's playing out around the country is funneling into this race, too. And it's more of an anti-establishment, more so than anti-incumbency per se. And I think Democrats and Republicans have been threatened nationally and will be here through this year.
All right, the governor's race. Does anybody have a clue? Well, I think we know what's going to happen, but how it happened and why it happens is another matter. We'll be back following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back. Well, we're talking about the primary is just days away. This very tight Joe Sestak, Arlen Specter race. It's a nail biter. Maybe we'll be up till hours of the night. I doubt it in a Senate race. That normally wouldn't happen, but boy, it is going to be a nail biter. All right, let's turn to the governor's race. Let's take the Republicans first. Tom Corbett has this huge lead. The Attorney General, he's running against Sam Rohr, a Berks County state representative. RB, let me start with you. Is the real question before the voters not whether Corbett wins by how much? Are we going to be debating the size of his victory because of Sam Rohr's grassroots effort? What do you think?
Yeah, that's the issue. Normally, a candidate in the Sam Rohr style gets about 25% of the primary vote in the GOP in a challenge like this. So, you would think that Rohr would meet the threshold. He seems to have some organization out there.
Tea Party people.
And then you would also think that because you add in the anti-establishment thing, that may push it a little bit higher. Yep. But, I mean, one of the things you notice that Sam Rohr and the Daryl Metcalf, Lieutenant Governor candidate, who you think might be bedfellows, are not. They're sort of rivals in a way.
So I have another question I want to ask you, but do you agree? I mean, I think on election night, we're going to be looking at how well Corbett does against Rohr, and the benchmark might be 60% for Corbett. If he gets 55%, Corbett, and Rohr gets 45, what are you going to be writing about?
If Rohr gets 45?
Yeah.
Yeah, that he delivered a scare to Attorney General Tom Corbett, that it was a close election, and that Rohr did far better than expected. It would be like when Peg Luxick did so well against Barbara Hafer in a gubernatorial primary. You're just not. No one expects that Sam Rohr is going to win. It's a question of how well he'll do.
So it's an expectation.
It is.
Yeah. Now, on the other thing, Tom Corbett seems to be focusing his entire attention on Governor Rendell, on the Rendell budgets, talking about no taxes, all these cutbacks, and although he's been vague about it except for a couple things like reducing the automobile fleet. Does that surprise you, in a sense, that he's going after Rendell? No,
because there is, and I had a column about this last week, love him or hate him, there's a lot of Rendell fatigue in this state after almost 8 years of Philadelphia governor, and who's raised taxes. This is definitely not the climate for that. Rendell is the perfect foil for Corbett in a Republican primary in this environment right now.
All right, on the Democratic side, Dan Honorato, the county executive from Allegheny County, has flooded the airwaves. Now, we have at least one other candidate, Tony Williams, who has, but Honorato now has, you pick the number, somewhere between a 20 and 30-point lead. Is it all about TV, Robert? Is it all about a message on TV that matters? Nothing else matters?
It's surprising because we have an open race for the governorship. We have just once every 8 years. It doesn't happen that often. There has not been a lot of, it's been somewhat of a lackluster campaign, especially, and we have a big Democratic field. We have, 4 candidates,
right,
but not a lot of excitement or seemingly voter interest.
Well, you know what I think? I mean, let me throw this one out at you, Brad. All 4 Democratic candidates, Tony Williams, Jack Wagner, the Auditor General, Joe Huffle, the Montgomery County Commissioner, and Dan Honorato, they have some nuances on abortion and guns and environment and schools. But on the big issues of education and or economic development and mostly on jobs, are they the same? Is that they're so similar?
They're similar. I wouldn't say that they're the same,
but
for
voters
there are a lot of
watching it.
Yeah, it becomes a question of where you make a distinction. And I think what Honorato has delivered effectively in all these TV ads that were out there unanswered for weeks, right, is that he has already done this as county executive and he can do it in Harrisburg.
Exactly.
Now, like I say, that was unanswered, so there was really no competition. Wagner doesn't have the money to really compete on the airwaves. Tony Williams is the only candidate who's been able to, answer Honorato, criticize him.
And you've seen some of his commercials that kick the, think out of the box, Here's my thesis quickly on this. Dan Honorato tells a story about what he did in Allegheny County. We can debate whether it's true or not. Mm-hmm. But he tells a story that he worked hard, solved the problems in Allegheny County. He's an executive and ready to lead. That's a pretty powerful narrative.
It was Rendell's narrative.
Exactly. And these other candidates don't have it. So the narrative about leadership and moving the state forward is a compelling one, and then when you put what's... Go ahead.
Then we have, you would think with Jack Wagner, the Auditor General, who's been run statewide 3 times, to have greater recognition. He's tried to create a narrative that he's, kept a watch on questionable spending, but that hasn't seemed to resonate.
Yeah, because we're in a recession, maybe, and people care about... Go ahead.
Well, Jack Wagner's an incredibly good candidate with credentials. He's a Vietnam War vet, but he hasn't had the money. And what we've seen from Mr. Wagner is almost a Catherine Baker Knowles-style race in a low turnout primary, where you just go out and try to visit people. You don't have the money. You go to county organizations. You get endorsements, and that's up against multi-million-dollar advertising of Honorato. So.
All right, Brad gets the last word. All right, our roundtable coming up with the Harrisburg Insiders. These are folks who know what's going on in the Capitol. We'll be back in the budget. We're back to that. Back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Healthsystem Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, from politics to the budget, is there really any difference in Pennsylvania? We have 2 vice presidents from their respective organizations, guys who come in from time to help us out. Jim Redmond with the Hospital and Healthsystem Association, and Gene Barr from the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. All right, Gene, let's start with you. Governor Rendell, this past week, laid into the candidates saying, you're unrealistic. You guys don't want to face up to the reality of the state budget. You don't want to talk. You talk in generalities about program cuts. You don't want to talk about the T word. And I think, you know, what's that all about?
Well, we know what the T word is because the governor's proposed a bunch of them and has a number of other ones in here now. The reality is the governor wants to increase spending again. And I think it's setting us up for another very interesting confrontation here over the next month and a half. The April revenues came in again worse than anticipated, continues to accelerate the problems we've got in the budget. And I think you're going to have a lot of, not only Republicans, but Democrats looking at this saying, I don't think we can afford to spend more money.
Yeah, now, let's turn to as we leave the politics and the primary, Jim, as you know as well as anyone in this state, we are immediately going to turn to the budget. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
All right. Now, the Governor Rendell sent his budget over $1 billion in increased spending, about a 4.1. Now we've got as Gene talks about, these bad revenue projections. The House has sent a budget over to the Senate. The Senate has not acted on it. I mean, the Senate is not going to adopt the House $1 billion increased budget, are they?
Well, my sense is the Senate wants to figure out what the revenues are going to look like. They waited, obviously, to see what the April revenues were. They'll wait to see what the May revenues are. Plus, Terry, in the governor's budget, there's an assumption that Congress is going to extend the enhanced federal matching funds for the Medicaid program. That amounts to $850 million.
So in the budget now, so our viewers got this, in the budget now is currently before the Senate, passed by the House, there is $800 million in assumed revenues from the federal government for health care.
That's correct.
And you think
the sense is that there is support in Congress and the President to do it. They just haven't done it yet. And the question is, are they going to be able to do that in time for the Pennsylvania General Assembly to include that in their budget?
Gene, look, you've been following these campaigns. We're on the eve of the Pennsylvania primary. What's your sense of the Senate and House elections just in general for the state legislature? What are the issues? I mean, the Senate, the governor's races and the Senate U.S. has kind of sucked all the air out of it. I don't even hear much about it. You follow this. What are they talking about?
Well, the Senate, you know, it's kind of because there's virtually no way the Senate Republicans can lose control. Control of the House is very much up in the air. It's very much in play, and you could see the Republicans take over again. And theoretically, very realistically, you could see a Republican governor, Republican Senate, Republican House. I think as we get closer, you're going to see more discussion around that.
But what are the issues? I don't even have a sense that is it anti-Harrisburg? Do any of you have a sense of that?
There's a lot of the anti-incumbency, you know, in those as well. I think you've got a lot of people, even people who, you know, maybe are left of center, who are looking at what's going on in D.C. and the deficits and looking at what's going on worldwide markets going, well, I don't like where this is headed.
Yeah, I mean, I was, you know, usually in a campaign, Jim, and as you know, you get a sense about what the themes are. I don't even have a sense for House races, and now, admittedly, it's a primary, right? But I don't even have a sense about what they're talking about out there. Is it all the anti-Harrisburg rhetoric when they're challenging these? What are you hearing?
Because they're all local races, you know, it's hard to get a sense as to what the local issues are. But I sense that it is about spending. It's about gridlock. It's about working with the other party. So it is sort of an anti-incumbent mood that seems to be prevalent out there.
All right, from anti-incumbency back to the state budget. We'll take a break and we'll follow it up with some additional questions on the budget and politics following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
All right, welcome back to the program. We're chatting about the budget as this important primary concludes on Tuesday. We'll be immediately heading into the budget. Let me start with you, Jim Redmond, the timeline. Are we going to be here on July 1 and thereafter talking about this budget again? Is there a good chance that will happen?
I think there's a very good chance that's going to happen, Terry.
And it's because?
Well, I think, one, they want to make sure that they're pretty accurate on all the revenues coming in. The tax amnesty program ends on the 18th of June, and trying to close a budget gap and decide what they're going to cut out of this budget is hard to do.
And you've got big ideological differences that still exist. You know, the Senate, much less likely to spend money and use taxes than certainly the House. But House Democrats, you know, don't seem like they're jumping on board.
Democrats don't want to, and I think that's going to be one of the differences. I agree with Jim. I think we're going to be here after July 1. The $800 million is still up in the air. Some people say it may not get decided till October. The issue is how many other issues are going to swirl around this. But I think
pension, the $4 billion.
I think that's going to get kicked down the road. I think transportation will get kicked down the road. Right. I think pensions get kicked down the road.
Rendell's role. Governor Rendell, unlike every other governor, and you followed a lot of these, he's not going away, is he? I mean, he is not going away.
Well, he's you know, popular in terms of the media and not afraid to speak his mind and to talk about the things that he cares about most.
Yeah, and that means he's going to hang in on this agenda, isn't he?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know that he can use the line item veto. I mean, the one person in Harrisburg who really, if he says, I'm going to stay here July and August, Gene Barr, he can stay here because he doesn't have to worry about the consequences.
Yeah, he will. I think what's interesting is to see, again, he's not running. The House and Senate Democrats are. They don't want to vote for taxes. That was readily apparent last year. It'll be interesting to see if they can cobble together some kind of veto-proof majorities here in the House and Senate on some, because they do not want to vote for taxes.
All right, I'm going to put you both on the spot. June 30 deadline met or not?
No.
You say no. You
Nope.
say no. Well, I'll tell you what, that doesn't surprise me, and this will be bad news in some ways for the state, because you know what the newspapers will do and the TV stations immediately, and this will feed the anti-incumbency that we're seeing. Although we don't seem to be a lot of current members in trouble.
Right.
I mean,
not as bad as last year, but it will go past June 30, and there's not as many people up as there have been the last couple of elections either. We haven't seen that major turnover, so we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, look, I want to thank you. We'll have you guys back, and we'll try to get a handle on this. My final word on this is I agree with you. I think it'll be late. I think Rendell will stay here. He will try to make sure that he gets this agenda, and he's not going to give up easy. All right. Thanks for watching Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.